What would a fairer, more just, more equitable Vanderbilt look like? And then how do we get there?
Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Adri Corti. The goal of my channel is to make academia entertaining and accessible. So if that sounds good to you, please make sure to comment and subscribe. Today I am super excited to be interviewing two members of the Vanderbilt's Graduate Workers United. So this is Alex Korzanski. He is a PhD candidate in anthropology and he is an organizer for VGWU. And this is Maxwell Hamilton. He is a second-year graduate student in cancer biology, and he is the treasurer of VGWU. So the first question, what is the mission of Vanderbilt's Graduate Workers United?
Our goal is to form a workers' union for grad workers at Vanderbilt and to win a strong union contract that improves conditions for all grad students and especially for all grad workers.
And you guys have been around since 2016?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So what is a graduate student union contract?
When grad students start grad school, you get an offer letter saying what the university is going to pay you and how much you're going to be expected to work. But that's not a contract. They can change those terms at will. Grad students are often surprised to find that they're not getting bonuses or raises that they might have been led to expect, that they're being asked to work longer hours or more semesters than they were told to anticipate. Basically, the university doesn't have to ask your permission, doesn't have to consult with you, doesn't have to negotiate before making those changes. A union contract would be basically like a contract for any other job. It's an agreement in writing that spells out clear expectations for how much you're going to get paid, how much you're going to work, and all kinds of details of what that work might consist of.
Okay.
And it basically provides a form of protection because grad students have very little power compared to, a multi-billion-dollar institution like Vanderbilt.
So why is there a need for a graduate student union contract?
I've gone to a bunch of meetings with different kinds of grad students in all different departments. Number one concern for 90% of people is that they want more money. A union contract, it also protects you against all kinds of other, abuses. Something you maybe have heard already. I think a lot of people are aware of this is like, if you do experience harassment in the workplace, don't go to HR. Because HR is there to protect
the university.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. What a union is and the union contract is it provides certain protections for graduate students, graduate workers, because you now have this organization which is unambiguously on your side, which can go to bat for you and really actually sort of push for justice. Rather than trying to do some kind of hard mitigation that really doesn't solve anything. It's really about benefiting the university. Another is just that getting a union contract in general typically is associated with higher pay.
Does that include like cost of living? Because I know a problem for a lot of people is Nashville is getting more and more expensive, but our stipends are not going up like accordingly. So is that something you want to write in as like a cost of living that it has to sort of meet as the city gets more expensive?
Yeah, presumably. So a union is a democratic organization, right? The organization as it stands right now is made up of grad workers at Vanderbilt and grad students at Vanderbilt, and any future contract would be subject to a vote of the members. Negotiating priorities would be determined democratically among the grad students. So what we ask for really depends on what people want. I imagine most people would like a cost of living increase, just like based on my conversations with folks, I know most people would like dental and vision. I know most folks would like third-party arbitration or some sort of fairer system for resolving cases of harassment or abuse or other sorts of discriminatory behavior. But there's really no limit on what you can potentially bargain for. And that's like the fundamental message about a union. A union is grad students working together to benefit ourselves and to benefit each other and to benefit the whole campus. I was reading just yesterday in light of the impending overturning of Roe v. Wade. Some unions are talking about negotiating provisions as part of their healthcare package that their employer will provide transit and cover the cost to travel to another state should that be necessary. That's something that a union can bargain for. So, it's really just, what people want and the limits of our imagination and the limits of our organizing capacity.
Definitely. And the changing political climate and like what you need at that point.
Yeah.
So you guys are touching on a lot of the questions already, but how will a graduate student union contract address the financial needs of graduate students? So I think we sort of talked about that a little bit, but did you want to add anything?
I mean, I guess very briefly, if you look at some of our peer institutions, Brown's getting paid $42,000 a year now.
Wow.
I believe Columbia is the same.
Wow.
Right? unions are setting, a new standard for grad compensation, and universities are trying to keep up. So Princeton, even though they don't have a union yet, because they have an active union drive on campus, and because they've seen what rival schools are doing, they recently raised their pay to match.
Wow.
So unions set the floor for what compensation is, not just for their own members, but across an entire industry. Presumably a grad contract that would raise wages for grad workers would also have spillover benefits that would benefit grads at Vanderbilt who aren't employed by the university, who might be on fellowships, or who might be in programs where they're not employed. Major raises are possible and probable if we win a union, and it's happened at other schools that have done it.
So how will a graduate student union contract address the economic needs of graduate students?
I mean, maybe one thing I could mention again is, the rise of cost of living in Nashville. We have received some recent raises. I mean, I can speak with more confidence about the biomedical people, but in general, I believe most of the College of Arts and Sciences as well has recently received a raise. That said, these raises are good. I mean, I'm in favor of raises, but they're not adequate to deal with the current financial situation here. We're looking at inflation of we're about 6 to 8% right now. So a raise of $1,000 it'll depend on how much you're making to begin with, but it's like 3%. Something I'll hear people say is any raise inadequate to at least match inflation is actually a pay cut.
Wow.
Because you're making less money, or you have less buying power. And then in addition to that, we've been doing a lot of research trying to get hard numbers on the rental market here in Nashville as well, and very variable. But I think the lowest estimate we found was 11% increase in rental costs on average in Nashville, with some reaching like 20%.
Wow.
We do know that there are grad students here on campus who are being priced out of their homes.
Wow.
And they're being forced to move as a result.
Yeah.
And they move further away from campus where housing is a little bit cheaper, but then they have to maybe buy a car.
Pay to park on campus.
And pay to park on campus.
Yeah.
Consider this like 20% increase in housing, times maybe you should pay about 30% of your income for housing, and then the inflation index for kind of the rest and stuff.
Okay.
And we should get a raise of closer to 10%.
I'm nervous that you said, 15%.
Yeah, quite a bit more than 3.
If you look at the MIT living wage calculator, I plugged in Nashville the other day, and they said that a living wage for a single adult without children in Nashville would be somewhat over $35,000 a year.
Okay.
To the best of my knowledge, there are not any departments that are routinely paying that to their grad workers, and some departments, especially at Peabody, pay significantly below that. So that would be a floor. Vanderbilt is building grad student housing. All of the numbers they've put out so far suggest that it will not be affordable on a grad student stipend at Vanderbilt. And when I say affordable, that's not sort of like a vibe. Affordability is defined by the government as rent at 30% or below of your income.
Oh, okay.
And the housing does not appear that it will be that way. So this is an issue that grad workers unionized at Columbia, at MIT have been really focused on. And as Vanderbilt goes from being just our employer to also being our landlord, I anticipate that is going to become a major issue here as well.
So how will the having a union contract address the communal needs of graduate students?
Just to talk about one specific initiative, recently the biomedical admin canceled a program which we used to have, which was called IG Pals. Basically, do you remember? Maybe you actually were a part of that. Well, I should explain what this program is for.
I know. They don't know, I don't think.
Which is that, when you're joining the program, basically you can get paired with a more senior grad student who kind of knows what they're doing, and they can help talk you through just, the process of picking a lab and identifying a good mentor. This was really great because I think it helped integrate people into a community, which was, I think, really important, especially during the pandemic, when people were very, very isolated. But they basically just kind of, as they typically do, kind of quietly just continued that program. And what we ended up doing, just the kind of biomed subcommittee of the VGWU, is trying to organize our own version of that. Where we found people, senior grad students, willing to mentor newer incoming grad students, and we helped pair them up and get them in contact. And then later also hosted a social, just to build a little bit more of a sense of community.
That's awesome.
Here at Vanderbilt.
It's funny that they sort of quietly dismissed it, because I think there's a problem with communication then too. And when they get rid of these programs, they don't say anything. I think that's part of the problem, is that there just needs to be even a better communication from the administrators of what can we expect, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just being part of the conversation, being consulted on decisions that affect you, having a chance to offer meaningful input, not just one of these focus groups that administration allegedly holds where they speak to 4 grad students and then claim to know what everyone thinks, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the fundamental things that I think motivates a lot of us.
Yeah. So how will having a union contract address the legal needs of graduate students?
Being a member of a union provides you with certain legal protections. Everyone who's a worker in the U.S. has certain rights under labor law.
Okay.
This includes international students. You cannot lose your immigration status because of joining a union. Retaliation against workers for organizing, either in a union or to form a union, is protected by law. Firing, retaliation, all of these things are prohibited. Once you form a union, you're provided with certain rights. One is that if you're facing disciplinary proceedings, so if you're in trouble with administration or with your supervisor, not over academic matters, but over work-related matters, you have the right to bring someone, a union representative, into meetings with you, to have a witness, to have an advocate, to have someone on your side.
Yeah.
And this can be a pretty significant help, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah.
Beyond that, when you negotiate for a union contract, employers are required by law to negotiate in good faith. So this means that you'll often hear threats from employers that, well, when you negotiate, we're going to start from zero, so you might end up with less than you have. That is not negotiating in good faith, right?
Yeah.
That's illegal retaliation, that cutting workers' pay because they joined a union is prohibited. This is why if you look at union versus non-union workers, even within the same industry, union workers consistently make more money and have better benefits. And then the last thing is union contracts can include anything, really, at least anything to do with workplace conditions. There are certain topics like pay and benefits where employers are required to negotiate with you. But then even beyond those, there's no prohibition on negotiating on things more broadly. So things like fair recourse in terms of harassment, exploitation, abuse, really just depends on, again, what priorities of the members are and how organizationally strong the group is, right? If people are willing to stick together and really fight for something, there's not a lot of limits on what can be won. And then once something is in a contract, it's legally enforceable, right?
Okay.
So as opposed to right now, if admin does something that we don't like, we can complain, we can write a petition, we can have a rally, we can try to shame them publicly, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. They're fairly shameless often.
Yeah.
But ultimately we're depending to a pretty great degree on their goodwill and their good faith.
Yeah.
And them choosing to do the right thing. If you have a contract, that's entirely different.
Yeah.
It's enforceable. And that's why there's the old union slogan, alone you beg, together we bargain. Gives you a meaningful seat at the table in a legally protected way.
I'm sort of surprised, like in the capitalist society, that there's so many laws that protect people in unions. When did that happen? Is that, I guess, a big part of history of?
Yeah, that was won by labor unions in the 1930s as part of the New Deal, 1930s and early 40s.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't something that was given away. People fought. People literally died for it.
Yeah.
Right. This is a legacy that people have worked over generations to build.
Wow.
And it's something that requires continued protection because in a lot of states, like in Tennessee, lawmakers are committed to stripping it away because they want workers who are easier to exploit.
I mean, I don't want to be too morbid here, but there are examples of the police firing indiscriminately into crowds of striking workers and bombing them. The first aerial bombing that ever happened in the United States was actually not Pearl Harbor. It was striking coal miners in West Virginia. Miniature civil wars almost within the United States. They're a part of our history that you almost never hear about. There really has been an historical major labor movement within the United States that's resulted in the kind of protections we have. I would also say that it's not a coincidence that in the 1950s, the time when a lot of, some people idealize, it depends on, what kind of person you are, of course. But at least there was a subset of working class Americans who could very reasonably expect to just graduate high school, get a job at a factory, and support a spouse who didn't work, to own their own home, to own 2 cars, and to have 3 kids, and to really be stable. I mean, factory work sucks, but that was a reasonable expectation for many people in the United States within living memory. And now, I mean, we have people with college degrees. It'd be unbelievable to have a spouse that doesn't work, or to own your own home in your early 20s.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, it's not a business that coincided with, the peak of union membership in the United States.
Yeah.
And it does, to me, mean that that's something we've had before, and it's something we can have again.
Yeah.
And that it's a reasonable expectation that workers are taken care of and live comfortable lives.
That's a crazy thing to say.
Yeah,
Radical.
and it feels a little bit like we're grad students, and so we're students, which means we're like kids.
Yeah.
But we're not. We're adults and we're workers. We go in and, I can take science as an example. I mean, you and I both go into the lab and we get paid to do research. Or, and other examples, to teach. You're doing that, then you're producing value for somebody.
Definitely.
And you're getting paid to do it, and you deserve to be paid fairly to do it.
Yeah, I think that gets confusing because we're graduate students, like you said, so people think we're just taking classes, that's all, and then we're on the student track, but we are working, like creating something, so.
Yeah, and this is something that university admins often use to argue against grad worker unionization, saying that your students, that if you unionize, it'll disrupt the mentor-mentee relationship. And this is nonsense. As Max was just saying, grads are workers as well as students, right? You can be more than one thing at the same time. Grads do the lab work that produces value behind these, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of grants that Vanderbilt gets. This past semester, I was teaching a course full of undergrads. Most of the intro language courses, the intro philosophy courses, a lot of courses across many departments are taught by grad workers. We are legally classified by the federal government as both students and workers. That is settled law. It has been for years. The first grad worker unions were started in, I believe, the early 1970s. University of Wisconsin-Madison in 1970 was the first one. Grads at the UC system, at UMass Amherst, at University of Oregon, University of Washington, at tons of public universities have been unionized for decades at this point. We haven't seen some sort of collapse of the capacity of these schools to train scholars, right? Grad union affects your ability to be a worker and your ability to win rights as a worker. It doesn't mean that your advisor can't offer advice or that they can't grade papers, right? In your capacity as a student, you remain a student. Legally speaking, it is an incorrect argument, but it's also a bad faith argument, and one that attempts to sort of frame grad worker organizing as something that's pitting us against faculty, which could not be further from the case. Right? We share a lot of interest with faculty. We work closely with them. Many faculty, I know, my advisor for one, are very supportive of grad worker unionization, right? It sets clear guidelines, it sets clear boundaries, it means that there's clear recourse, and it makes it easier to recruit top talent, right? My department recently failed to recruit a grad student that I know they really wanted because she also got an offer from Brown where they're paying $10,000 a year more and she gets dental, right? Why on earth would she come here? It would be crazy. I would never advise a grad to go to a school that is not unionized.
Is there a website or a way for people to know what universities have been unionized so they can, if they're looking for a grad school, that they can know?
I don't know that there's a central list, but if you speak to grads at that university, they should be able to tell you. And if you're applying to a grad school, you should speak to grads at that university.
Piece of advice.
Yes.
So how do you achieve legal union recognition? It's easy, right?
We'll probably just do it tomorrow. You got to get support. We need a majority. Ideally, the vast majority of people on board. 3/4 might even be a little bit on the low side. We want really, really good, super strong support going into the sort of actual final union drive.
Support from grads.
Yes, that's right. Although, support from faculty is great, and there are faculty members who are openly supportive, which is fantastic.
That's great.
Yes, because what's going to happen when we go into the actual union drive is then that's when the disinformation starts. That's when they start fighting us. And some people are going to get cold feet. Some people are going to get a little bit nervous. Some people are going to fall for the lies, I guess. And we'll lose a few. And we need a majority to win it. What we can do, although this is not exactly the path we're planning on taking, is that we start a card signing campaign, which basically you get, historically it'd be a physical card, but in our case it's a Google form, where you basically sign. What that signing that card basically just says is that I would like the VGWU to legally represent me as, to my employer,
Okay.
using, the legal systems established for collective bargaining for unions. Technically, the way that could go is we then get, at a minimum, 30% of people to sign.
Okay.
And we then go to our employer and we say, we would like you to voluntarily recognize our union. And in some alternative reality where your employer wants what's best for you, they go, oh yeah, okay.
Sure. Happy to do it.
That's great. That never happens.
Yeah.
And they force a vote. Then what the vote basically is people, vote on whether or not they want a union. And that vote is administered by the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, the government agency involved in dealing with labor stuff. And they will do their best to perform a legal and fair election, which will allow us to vote. We need a majority of people to vote yes for the purposes of unionization, and at that point, the university will be compelled to recognize our union legally.
Okay.
And then we can begin contract negotiations. The scope of how much we can win is really proportional to how much pressure we're able to apply, and that is proportional basically to how much support we have.
Yeah.
If it's just 10 people going, hey, we really want a good union contract and we want dental, they kind of go, well,
yeah,
who cares?
exactly. Yeah.
We have a lot of people saying, no, we demand dental
Yeah.
and vision insurance or whatever kind of things we want. We're growing quite quickly. You're signing the membership card. The only people who know it are the people on the coordinating committee. It's considered a secret because you have the right to have your identity protected.
We do not expect Vanderbilt will voluntarily recognize us,
Yeah.
but I don't want to naturalize that. Employers can, and some do, voluntarily recognize their workers' wish to form a union. Good employers do that. Employers who respect their workers.
Yeah.
Because a union is not some sort of outside organization. We don't have any staff who is not a grad student themselves. We don't have any
Yeah.
staff, period. All of our funds is voluntarily contributed by grad students who,
Okay.
as you know, do not have a ton of extra money. When your workers get together and say, hey, we would like to have a meaningful voice, a good employer will recognize that.
Yeah.
And some do. So recently, I believe at Wesleyan, the undergrad employees of that college formed a union and were recognized.
Wow.
So it can happen. It can even happen in higher education.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't let Vanderbilt off the hook if the administration choose not to do that. It's not just about winning that election and forming the union. It's also about the ability to win a strong contract. And the way you do that is to have the credible threat of a strike. Now, nobody wants to have a strike because it's inconvenient, because you want to be doing your research. That's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
You want to be teaching your students. But fundamentally, the power of workers comes from the ability to say, you know what, we're not going to work, and we're going to see how well this university runs with only admins and no one in the labs and no one in the classroom.
Yeah.
And to exert the power that we actually have, that's only possible if everybody stands together. Indiana University is a few steps ahead of us in this process. They recently demonstrated majority support, are seeking recognition. They're on strike for that. And
Wow.
they just had a vote to authorize the continuation of the strike, and I believe the figure was something like 97% of members of the union voted to continue striking.
Wow.
And that's the sort of solidarity and that's the sort of unity we're trying to build.
So you've talked a little bit about other universities who have successfully unionized. So what sort of things did they get? You mentioned raise and better health care. Are there anything else you wanted to mention?
The only one that came to mind is Georgetown, which I believe won a 10% across the board increase in pay.
Some things that other universities have won, aside from big raises and guaranteed cost of living increases and dental care, vision care, there's been universities that have set up emergency funds to meet grad workers' needs if you have some sort of crisis. So I know that Georgetown has something along this line. Child care subsidies for grad workers who are parents, all sorts of support for international students.
So you mentioned this a little bit, but how do you think graduate students having a union contract would affect their relationships with their faculty members or their PIs? So you mentioned how the university was saying that would really shift those relationships. So what's sort of your opinion about that?
In some sense, your advisor is sort of your boss, but really the truth is that you share an employer,
Yeah.
which is the university, which is the admin.
Yeah.
And it's not a coincidence that in many cases, faculty, maybe non-tenure track faculty unions, are allied with graduate labor unions because they have a lot of similar interests to each other, which is that they both want more stuff.
Yeah.
And the admin doesn't want to give it to them. Maybe if I want to contrive some scenario where, it does make a difference that you're unionized, with respect to your relationship with your advisor, is that it protects you against them if you are the victim of abuse from them.
Yeah.
So like that, I mean, that is kind of the case where it would matter. And I would say that, yeah, it does matter, but like in a good way. Maybe just as one example, there's a case not too long ago at Harvard where there was one particular faculty member who was harassing many students over decades, I believe. The admin just closes rank when they're accused.
Yeah.
And a union provides you with, protection against that, basically.
Yeah.
If you have a good advisor, if your advisor treats you appropriately, if they're not working you in excess of the number of hours you're supposed to work, it won't affect your relationship with them, and it might improve it because it means like everyone has a clear set of understandings and expectations.
Yeah.
Everybody knows how the system's supposed to work. It's all down in writing.
Yeah.
Right, avoids problems. And it also makes it, again, easier for them to recruit grad students. Right, it lets them offer better conditions, better pay, more of a voice.
Yeah. Why do you think it's like such a hard fight to unionize? So, in other words, why are universities so, in most cases, against student unions?
So I want to draw a distinction. I don't think the university is opposed to a union. I think administration is opposed to the union, and those are not the same thing.
Yeah, that's a good distinction.
We're the university.
Yeah. The university does not work without us teaching and doing research.
Yeah.
Without admin, to be honest, I think we'd be fine.
Okay.
It's unclear that they're adding any value here.
Yeah.
And at most universities where we see these really heated fights over grad unionization, organizing committees that are, a few steps beyond us, where they've gone public, where they've had the vote, where they're possibly on strike.
Yeah.
We see undergrads overwhelmingly supporting them. We see undergrad student governments passing resolutions in support of grad workers because those grad workers are their classmates and are their teachers and are their mentors. We see grad student government coming out in support. We see faculty organizations like the AAUP or like various disciplinary organizations coming out in favor of it. Because, grad working conditions are the learning conditions for undergrads. And also, every faculty member used to be a grad student. We're part of the same system of labor exploitation. The same system that's underpaying us is the system that means that most of us are going to end up as precariously employed, non-tenure track faculty if we're lucky to get a job.
Yeah.
Right? We're all part of the same system. And the people who are largely at fault for this are the upper administrators, right? I'm not talking about the administrative assistant in your department. Those people are also employees. They're also on our side.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the chancellors. I'm talking about the provosts, right? Vanderbilt is sitting on an endowment of something like $10 billion, excuse me. It grew the last fiscal year over 50%, I believe.
Yeah.
Right? There is the money to do this. There's money to pay everybody fairly. There's money to give everybody dental. So this isn't about us against the university, it's about us against the admin, and they don't want to do it because, to be honest, upper admin is a lot closer to a financial elite, right? They are invested in growing the endowment and in growing their prestige and maintaining control over their little administrative fiefdoms more than they're invested in education or the well-being of grad students or in anything else. They don't want to share power.
So what has VGWU done regarding student mental health?
Maybe I can speak to this one a little bit more since, it's in biomedical sciences where we've really seen this crisis. For biomedical sciences, across all departments, we've had 4 student suicides in the past 2 years. There's a recent article about this that caused a bit of a
stir,
and I mean, rightly, because that's an unacceptable number. For every suicide, there are 10 or more people who attempted, who contemplated, and then even more people who are suffering. And it does seem to be something specific to the biomedical sciences. It's something about workload, it's about, I guess the conditions of exploitation lead people to have that mental health. The university does provide mental health care within certain parameters. So, and I have not done much to take advantage of them myself. So I'm not, I guess maybe not the best person to speak about this, but the bottom line is that people are very, very unhappy with what's offered. I mean, I've heard of people who still feel like they need care getting kicked off. I think I've heard of incredibly long wait times. And even now we've had like a dedicated counselor for biomedical sciences. And even that appears to be basically inadequate for the current situation. I'm glad that the admin is making some kind of attempt to deal with this issue. I mean, don't think it's a coincidence that it comes along with it going public and stuff, which is very disappointing. The kind of analogy, I've used in the past for talking about how they deal with mental health is, it's like free healthcare for gladiators. The problem is, it's like, okay, great. Like if gladiators have to exist, I guess they should get free medical treatment. But the problem is that they have to go fight each other. The beginning of solving this mental health crisis should be much more about not causing it than treating it.
Yeah.
This is very much they take this very kind of treating the symptoms approach to dealing with mental health care.
Yeah.
Which is why, we worked on an open letter just about what grad students need, from the admin and from their advisors regarding mental health. It's followed by the admin's response to this article. And, we called a meeting of biomedical students. We had just under 50 people attend this meeting, and we all resolved to write this letter. And in this letter, we spell out very clearly that yes, access to mental health care is very important, and actually we need more, and here's what we need. But also that the issue is that we work too long hours, and that we're being forced out of our homes because of rising costs in the city, and things like that. That, to me, is the solution to the mental health care crisis here on campus, not just providing more care.
Yeah, I agree completely. I really think just paying people more could just solve a lot. Not completely, but really help solve a lot of the issues that we're seeing. You guys recently petitioned to get biomedical students raises, and you won. Can you tell us about how that happened?
We were promised, but not promised, to get $1,000 raises every year. Then they just decided that actually no. Didn't say anything. The decision was made something like 9 months before we ever found out about it.
This is during the pandemic.
This is mid-pandemic too, which is also when people's cost of living is going up. So they made this kind of unilateral decision behind closed doors without telling us. And then we found out about it, and that really, really annoyed people, as you might imagine. Our solution was basically like, let's write a petition and just try to get the admin to give us our money back. That's kind of the bottom line.
Yeah.
And we just kind of sent out some information, tried to call a meeting, get as many people as we can to that meeting, and make a decision about what we wanted to do. The union is a democratic organization, so typically when we do stuff like this, we identify issues that people have, and then try to call a meeting and have a discussion about it, try to come to some kind of consensus through discussion.
Yeah.
And a petition is what we decided on. And then basically we call upon people who have done some organizing before, who were present at that meeting, to go out and get signatures, basically. And, just like everything we do, it's a Google form, with the petition body at the front, and then you scroll down and put your name at the bottom. And we got over half of all biomedical science students to sign this, and I think that should probably come as no surprise. I think certain issues people are much more interested in solving, and I think the ones that people are most interested in solving are typically the ones where something is taken away from them.
That makes sense.
It's just added something psychological. And a lot of people, even when we told them, were learning that we were not getting those raises for the first time.
Yeah.
And they were like, yes, we will sign the petition.
Yeah, that makes it hurt even more, like seeing it for the first time in that way.
Yeah, we collected those signatures. We, a group of us went into, I guess we're not naming names, but to admin's office, and slapped that petition down on his desk and said, we want to talk. And, at the moment, of course, we got a bunch of sort of non-answers about, I understand important cost of living. It's very sympathetic.
Yeah, it's like a political way of saying nothing.
It was all very diplomatic.
Yeah.
And then, it was about a week later, we get an email, actually, we've just decided we're going to give you the raises back. Nothing to do with the petition. But yeah, you are going to get them after all.
Okay.
And in fact, next year, our raise will be $1,500. Currently, we're making $33,500 in our departments, and that'll get bumped up to $35,000. The fact that we're getting a larger raise than we've ever gotten before, as far as at least within the memory of grad students who are currently at Vanderbilt. And right after we were actually getting denied raises, is maybe even that's kind of connected. They're a little scared.
Yeah.
As scientists, we're supposed to say correlation doesn't imply causation, but I think in this case where they go 9 months having made it behind the doors, closed doors decision that they're not going to give us money, and then we give them a petition with over half of all grad students signing it, and then a week later they decided they're actually going to give it to us after all. That decision was made because of the petition.
And this is a fairly typical story, is that some section of campus is experiencing a problem. They don't know how widespread it is. There's no announcement that's been made, right? We're operating in the dark by design.
Yeah.
Because admin is not transparent, and we're in a position of needing to collect information, to communicate amongst ourselves, and then to organize some response, and to really emphasize the people in the affected departments or whatever the affected population is, taking the lead. So we had a really similar series of events to the Biomed Raises over at Peabody this past fall, where people suddenly found they had, I think,
Like
a
a
large
fee?
surprise fee that people had not been warned about, and that was suddenly due in 2 or 3 weeks.
Which we also had, but our department just covered it.
Really? What is a student fee for just existing on campus?
A fee to pay, for all the programming that's going on during a pandemic that we're going to, right?
Okay.
All the free
The
lunches we're not
university
getting.
needs to claw money back from us.
Okay.
But so people noticed this on their bill. They were mad, of course, talking about I can't pay this. I don't have $800 lying around. What are we going to do? And again, they turned to the campus-wide VGWU for support, but the people in the departments that were affected took the lead. They were the ones who spoke to their colleagues because they're the ones who know their colleagues, who have that trust, that have that relationship.
Okay.
They were the ones who proposed what they thought an appropriate solution would look like. And once again, we were successful. That fee was waived this year.
That's awesome.
So it wasn't a permanent victory. It wasn't as full a victory as we would like. We would like the university to say, you know what, this fee is gone, forget about it.
Forever, never again.
But, that's one large, potentially devastating surprise bill that these people did not have to pay. And Peabody, I should note, are among the worst paid grad workers on campus.
One extra detail for that story is I think many in Peabody are also not paid over the summer.
Correct.
And this surprise fee came over the summer. So they have this ridiculous situation where even though they're making, I think as low as $25,000 a year.
And again, it's the communication. Like, that fee is unacceptable. But even if maybe a few months before they'd be like, this fee is coming. Like, it just seems to be like a black box, and then
Yeah, it adds insult to injury.
When Delta started, the Delta wave, the first years in the biomedical sciences were having class, the first class ever of grad school, the same day that the VUMC tweeted out that they are just out of beds. And that class was meeting feet away from the VUMC itself. And there's something just incredible irony to it. There isn't a little bit to be said for the argument that the admin likes to make that, as long as most people are vaccinated, as long as people are wearing their masks indoors, it's probably fine. And maybe yes, and maybe for the people who are healthy, people who don't live with anybody who's vulnerable, anything like that, maybe to an extent that's true, but for many people it wasn't. I think that this does kind of go to show, maybe the kind of principles of solidarity, which is that, not everybody is affected by this. In fact, it was probably a minority of students who really did feel that they themselves were at risk, or something they knew was at risk as a result of the Delta variant. Nevertheless, I think it was important to fight to help try to get them hybrid options. And the admin's response to Delta was this very hardline view that you do not do hybrid classes, period. But for those people who had asthma, who had any number of other issues, immunocompromised people, I spoke to these people. There are people who
they exist
who were vulnerable to COVID, to getting severe cases of COVID at the university, who were grad students. Just give them some option to continue their studies. The way the admin just said, nope, we will not do it at all, was completely insane to me, and I think insane to a lot of people.
You can't just turn on a Zoom meeting while you're teaching. Even it doesn't have to be perfect, but it could even be a little janky, but you can make it hybrid if you tried a little bit, I think.
Yes, and many professors wanted to. I've heard many stories of faculty members who said, I've been told that I'm forbidden from doing this, but if any students want to turn on Zoom on their computer for a friend, I can't stop you, right? Lots of faculty are willing to do this. I was teaching a course this semester. I would have been more than happy to allow a hybrid option.
Yeah.
But I was warned by my advisor that, admin had taken a very firm line and that it was not advisable to be flexible in this way with my students.
Why do you think, is it loss of money, or?
Yes.
It's got to be that.
Yeah, why would you pay however much they're paying to go to Vanderbilt if it's all on a computer screen? Of course, I think that's the only plausible explanation.
Yeah.
And I also think it's worth noting the irony, which is the spring semester we delivered a petition to admin asking for a hybrid option. And we failed to deliver it because it turned out they were all working from home and there was no one there to receive it. They understood the risk.
Oh my gosh.
They didn't want to get COVID, but it's a different standard for us than it is for them. And I think that's really illustrative that if they really believe that there was no risk, they would have been in their office.
So what do you think makes some more successful than others?
It depends on, I think, the cause of the failure,
Okay.
or the cause of success. I think a petition can fail because the admin just doesn't respond to it and doesn't make the change that you asked for.
Yeah.
It could also be because we don't get enough signatures. That does happen sometimes as well. And so, I mean, in the latter case, I think it's just a consequence of, sometimes there's an issue, but there isn't just quite the momentum there to really push through and get it solved, which is going to happen sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the advantages of having a union that's organizing and contract and stuff is that there's sort of a pipeline for dealing with issues, and I think even smaller things can get resolved in a better way. They don't require this campus-wide movement to resolve, one fee, for one time. And the other is sometimes just that the admin stonewalls us. I mean, that's typically their response is just pretend like we don't exist. They just cover their ears. And just with the hybrid classes, I wouldn't call it completely unsuccessful. We were on the news multiple times. The local news, we were on NPR. We had the nightly news. We had some articles written about us. So, it was public. Yeah. And so that was good. We really got some attention. And then the admin gave just some bullshit non-response,
So what have you gained by participating in this group?
You answer because I don't know if I answer right. Let's see.
We got a $1,500 raise.
Yeah, I got some money.
You got money.
I guess for one thing is, you asked us earlier about a sense of community. I think that's a big, I never would have met people in the humanities or even other STEM fields if it weren't for this organization.
Yeah.
I have tons of friends. It's tons of socials. It's a really great kind of community to be a part of.
Yeah.
Early days during the pandemic, we're all just locked inside. You move to a new city, you don't know anybody, you start a grad program, and the grad program is just Zoom for hours every day.
Yeah.
And you're just at
That's
home.
hard.
Having this kind of community of people I met with regularly and was really great. And the other is just that it feels really nice to be working for something that you really kind of care about. It's kind of this is sort of my extracurricular, so to speak. People have their sports or hobbies and stuff, and this is kind of what I do.
Okay.
And it's like when my project isn't going well in the lab, well then at least maybe the VGWU stuff is going.
I would say many of the same things, that making connections with people all around the university has been really important. It's built a really strong sense of community, the feeling of purpose, right, that we are doing something that is going to pay dividends for future grad students, hopefully, if we win, and I think that we will. The energy is with us. The energy is not just at Vanderbilt, but across grad organizing movement.
Yeah.
Schools are winning, universities are winning, and we're going to win too.
So what can the viewers do to help you guys out or get involved with the VGWU?
The first thing you can do is check out our social media and websites, and the link should be down below. Yeah. But beyond that, that'll give you information, let you get in touch with us if there's concerns in your department. But the biggest thing is to talk to your coworkers, right? Talk to them about what's not working for them. Talk about what's going wrong in your department, and then talk about how it could be better, right? What would a fairer, more just, more equitable Vanderbilt look like? And then how do we get there, right? So have these conversations, and then the difference between having a conversation and organizing is you need to plug into the wider network, right? So get in touch with VGWU. If you're not comfortable having organizing conversations, we can help you practice, we can help you train, and then we can connect you to the wider efforts, both to support whatever you're working on in your department, whatever your priorities are, and to help you stand in solidarity with your coworkers across campus.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thank you for being on today. It was so much fun to talk. Please make sure to comment down below any questions that you have for them and engage with the VGWU on all the social medias that I'll put in the description box below and here on the screen. And thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, and I guess we'll see you guys next time. Bye!